Joe Janus is a longtime client of Kee Technology who services the Phoenix area. Joe is a dog dad, gym goer, architect enthusiast, and optimist. I know that from firsthand. He is very optimistic, which I love that about his personality. So
Thanks.
Joe has been using our setup since the beginning of 2024. He is here today to share his experiences and insights into his experience with Kee Technology. So Joe, thank you so much for your time and having this conversation today. To start off, I would like one of my favorite questions to ask is at the very beginning of your real estate journey. How did you get in the industry?
Sure, sure. First of all, thanks for the invite to do this. I really appreciate it. As far as when I started in the industry, it was back in 2005, so I've been in it for, a number of years. And the thing that sparked it was the my boyfriend at the time was I was working for a technology guy who would do technology consulting, and I was his salesperson. And at the same time, like I mentioned, my boyfriend who was doing loans had a lot of interaction with a lot of different real estate agents. And he just came to me one day as I'm sitting in my office, and he said, "You know what? You would be really good at real estate. With so many boneheaded people in the industry that are successful, you would kill it." So I was like, okay. I mean, that's really how it started. That's really how it started. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And I did it sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, which I mean by doing it part-time for a number of years. And then, not too long ago, I just said, it's time to just jump in with both feet and, get it done. For a short period of time, I did have a partner in the business as well, who did a lot of the back end stuff. And I was the front end, the marketing and the sales. But he and I parted ways. And that's one of the things that sort of drove, and I know I'm probably jumping around a little bit, so bear with me. But one of the things that drove sort of an automation piece and the back end piece was he was really good at that and I wasn't. And I don't remember how I heard about you guys. And I was like, this sounds really cool. I could use that. And then really just started with an engagement. And, from there on, I was like, okay, you guys know what you're doing. I was fairly technology savvy, but I did see technology going at such a fast pace, I could not keep up. So I needed help.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a cool story. And yeah, I was going to ask if your boyfriend at the time was going to mention real estate because he had had bad experiences with bad agents, and it sounds like he
Yeah,
did. And but you could be so much better.
exactly.
So,
That's what really drove it. So I'm here.
yeah. So one more like origination question with your real estate journey. Do you remember who your first deal was with? Was it someone you knew or just someone that found you online? Who was it with?
Sure. Sure. Good question. And I'll start by saying this was way back when SEO and, websites were sort of in their infancy. And I knew that I really wanted to focus on, SEO. I knew I wanted to have a really wonderfully designed website that functioned well and all that stuff. So I put all those things together, hired the right people to do those things. And this was back before I think you guys even existed. So, yeah, my first client, came to me and I helped subsequently help her and her now husband buy and sell probably 5 homes over the past, 20 years or so. But I still remember her. Her name is Gail, and she found me online
Wow,
and
that
just
is
reached out
really
to me. And I
rare.
was like, wow, cool. This is really neat. More, more, more.
Yeah, it's really rare to hear that someone's very first deal was a stranger from online. Usually it's
Yeah,
just like a friend or friend of a friend or a family member. So that's really unique. Like just from the get-go, you already had that advantage with your SEO and your website.
I did. And I thank you for that. And I think part of it too, and I'll pat myself on the back a little bit, because I used to be a pretty shy person, but ever since getting into sales, or I've sort of come out of my shell a little bit. A number of clients came to me from, the quote unquote internet, in my first few years. And, thank God it was a good investment. Since then, SEO has, there's no way in heck, unless you're like a Zillow or a Redfin, you're going to be found for any sort of decent keywords. But I have to tell you, as a side note, this was this year, actually, earlier this year. I got a call from a gentleman out of Texas, and I thought it was a spam call in the beginning, and left me a voicemail. And long story short, he and his mother bought a home here in Arizona, but they found me 20 years ago online because of that architecturally distinctive sort of thing that I had going on brand wise. And they said, whenever we were ready to buy a home, we just have to use Joe Janus. And I was like, are you kidding me? 20 years later. I mean, that's pretty cool. Well,
Wow.
it's, few and far between. And I certainly don't want to rely on, those little gifts out of nowhere. It's still kind of neat that, things like that pop up as little
Yeah.
sorts of
Yeah.
gifts.
Yeah, the fact that someone saved your information just from how impressed they were with you online 20 years ago, like that's also unheard of. That's even less unheard of, like just one in a
Yeah.
million, in my opinion.
Yeah. So that put a big
So
smile on my
you,
face.
yeah, that's great. So you had mentioned that you started off in real estate part-time. How did you make that transition from part-time to full-time?
Um, I really had to, I really had to push myself to do it and get out of my comfort zone. Because there were times when I was like, okay, it's a really good year. I'm good. And then there are a few times when the years weren't that great. And I got scared and I was like, okay, it's time to go get, you know, a quote unquote job with a salary and health benefits. Because I have, a partner to support and a few animals to support in a home. But probably, I think it was about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer. I had just got tired of um, the working for other people. And I just came to the conclusion of, look, you got two choices. I can either work for myself and make money for myself, or I can do it for somebody else. So I chose myself. And then I did create a PLLC to create a business and all that stuff, just from a mindset perspective. So now that that's sort of all set up, um, I think I'm ready to go. And, it'll be for the next 10 years or so, I will be doing, residential real estate and enjoying it.
Yeah. So then today, fast forward to the end of 2025, what does your business look like now? Are you working everything? Is it just you, or do you have anyone supporting you either virtually or in-house?
Yeah. I did make some, I made some choices to do a few things, bringing on someone to help with, phone calls and follow up and things like that. But what I did learn was, and you can only do this by making mistakes, is I jumped the gun a little bit with some of those things. Um, and I kind of beat myself up a little bit because, I hired somebody, then I said, hey, I moved a little too quickly. And I was like, oh man, don't make mistakes that other people are paying for and whatever. So you forgive yourself and you move on because at the end of the day, everybody's going to make mistakes. So it was, right now it's just me. Me, and occasionally I will use a transaction coordinator if I have a number of deals going on at the same time. Um, but, and I know I'm kind of popping around a little bit, but what I also noticed when I saw the TC Assist offering come out, I was like, okay, not only, could I benefit from this as well as my clients in communication, but maybe it's a way to help me maximize my, sort of managing of a number of deals per month before I need to bring on a transaction coordinator. So at least that was my
Mm.
thinking. Just try to automate as much as possible. Not that I don't want other people involved in my business. It's just how to maximize everything before I go and do that. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Yeah. So you had mentioned like when you first started in real estate, your first deal came from your website. Today, where would you say your business comes from? Does it still come from your website? Is it evenly split between that and advertising or past clients? What does that look like?
Sure. One thing I can say as far as like the website stuff and marketing and advertising is, I kind of, I didn't do as much to stay on the forefront of, SEO and things like that. So I did drop off. So I really don't rely on that, anymore just because it's few and far between. But what I noticed this year was a few things. Number one, a number of referrals came my way. One of my past clients referred me to a gentleman who, had two homes to sell that he was using as rentals and one home to buy. So I did that. There were a few that came from open houses, just meeting people at open houses, which was really cool. That was the crux of it this year, and then there was one past client as well. So past client referrals and then doing open houses.
Okay, simple enough. So, another question about today. What technology do you use to support your business? What CRM? What website? Do you work with any companies? Anything like that?
Sure. I will say that the focus of my tech stack right now is a few things. Number one, Follow Up Boss. And as you can see, I'm with Compass. So they have a wonderful app as well, a whole suite of products and a CRM and everything. And there are a lot of wonderful things about Compass that I like. However, I've already built out everything in Follow Up Boss. And there are people like you who only know Follow Up Boss. And I'm not willing to give up. I'm just not willing to give up my Follow Up Boss, my Key Technology folks, to go over to Compass's CRM in its entirety. There are just some limitations to it. But like I said, there are some good things to it as well. So as far as like a single source of data where it all comes into play, and all collects is Follow Up Boss. And then the other technologies that I've been using that I'm starting to use a lot more is RealScout and then StreetText. StreetText is wonderful, and I'm going to tell on myself a little bit. I'm one of the people who was like, okay, let's try it. I got a lot of leads. I didn't do a great job in conversion and follow up, so that's on me. And the reason I say this is because I hear a lot of times, and I used to be this way too, the leads are crap. The leads are this, that, or the other thing. And I'm like, you know what? Once you get the lead, guess whose responsibility is? Yours.
Mhm.
So, those are the major sorts of technologies. As far as a website goes, I have a website with a company called IDX Central. Really good folks. And it's a WordPress based website, which, I love WordPress, and there's a lot of folks out there that can support it. So that's why I'm going to stick with them. What's the other thing I'm using? I think those are the main ones that sort of drive the business.
Okay. And whenever you decided to use Follow Up Boss, how did you come across it and why did you initially decide to use it?
Good question. I don't remember. No, I really don't remember what was the impetus to, or what brought me into Follow Up Boss, other than probably, suggestions or recommendations that I heard about through Lab Code Agents or, BAM or somebody. I just can't remember where. But once I started to, work within it, I just found it to be extremely user friendly. There were a lot of other apps and companies that, worked within it. And I'm just like, okay, this seems to be like the 200-pound gorilla in, real estate from a CRM perspective. So let's just stick with that because everybody integrates with it. And that's what really, again, sold me on it, and I'm staying with it because of all those things.
Mhm. Then, as far as RealScout, what has your experience been with them?
Again, I'm trying to remember. I don't remember how I, got into using it. I think at the time I was probably using HomeBot, but I wanted something a little more that had a little more zhuzh, for, for clients and prospects. And to me, it just seems like it's a great product from a couple different arenas. First of all, from a sort of consumer's perspective, I think it's really easy to use. There's a lot of data, whether you're a buyer or a seller. Number one, that people appreciate, home value, market alerts, the heat maps, things like that. And then for me on the back end, which is really cool, it mimics exactly how the MLS looks, but it delivers the data to consumers in a much nicer, prettier fashion and easier to navigate. So for me, that was just like a no-brainer.
And do you use that instead of MLS for setting up searches once someone becomes a client?
Sometimes I do both. And here's why. Because our MLS in particular, I don't know if this is other MLSs, but our MLS is the only category that does not get propagated to like Zillow, Redfin, or through the feed are coming soons.
Mhm.
So I have to use my MLS from a coming soon perspective, but I can use RealScout for everything else.
Got it. Okay. So moving back over to Follow Up Boss, in your own words, how would you describe the transformation that happened between when you first started using it and then deciding to work with Key Technology, and now how has your CRM setup changed over time?
Sure. I think for me, the visibility into my database, as to, who are the key people to reach out to, who are showing some sort of, buyer or seller sort of interest, I guess you could say, um, is brought to the forefront. Whereas before, I had a bunch of contacts that I didn't know what they were doing. I did not have visibility into my database as to people's activity. But working with you guys brought those things out, and it also helped me just organize things in a much better way, much more clarity into into my database. Who to call, when to call, why to call. These people are showing a lot of activity, so we're going to put them up here in your call first kinds of folks. And I know that's sort of simplifying everything, but on the back end, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question is in the back end, we've got automation set up, I believe. So
Yeah.
have you seen those automations run? What did those look like?
The automations they're always running in the background. The communications are always running in the background. One of the nice things about having you guys do those things was you were able to create automations and action plans based on leads that would come from StreetText, that would come from ZBuyer, which I don't really use anymore. So those were already created. And for me, and I would imagine most agents, the last thing I want to do and can do is I know what my skill set is, and it's not writing action plans and automations and emails, 10, 15, 20, 30 emails and texts and things like that. That just overwhelms me. And I would imagine it overwhelms a lot of other agents as well. That's not, while I do like to market and it's kind of fun, can I write one from scratch? No. Yes, there's AI, but still, why am I doing it? I had to remind myself, that while that stuff can be fun, especially using StreetText, um, my job is to really be out either writing contracts or getting listings.
Yeah, yeah, I'll see a funny video every now and then where it'll be like a business owner on Instagram or something saying, now that I'm a business owner, I'm now a content creator and now I'm doing TikTok dances. I know most of us are not doing that. And they're also like a copywriter. It's like you didn't enter this business to do all of those things, but here you are.
Exactly, exactly. And, I still have to do, I was consistent there for a while to go off on a side note for a second doing Instagram. And I even had a YouTube channel I was using. But to be quite honest with you, I was just like, this is overwhelming to me right now. And I just need to pick one. And I keep being reminded of that by a number of people I still, work with or get coached by. And it's just one of those things where, if you're good on video, if you're good in front of people, do your video, do it on a consistent basis. By the way, consistency is just the name of the game. I don't care. And I'm telling on myself a little bit because that's also a struggle of mine. So.
Yeah. And then I know that you just recently, maybe even the past month or two, you just
Mhm.
recently signed up and started using TC Assist. I know it's like you're just like an infant stage, but
Right.
in this infant stage, what does that look like for you? Have you started using it? What does the TC Assist build out look like to you so far?
As far as, yes, I'm in the infancy, and in my head, and this is where I think it was Jenna, I don't remember, it might have been somebody else on the team. I was like, okay, in my brain, I'm going to, because by the time you guys implemented TC Assist for me, all the deals that I had in the works were closed. And I have two other clients right now, but they're not under contract yet. So it was like in my head, in order for me to start using TC Assist, I have to have one of those people under contract to start the process.
Mhm.
And like I said, I think it was Jenna. I don't remember, but it might have been somebody else who said, well, maybe you could just create sort of a phantom deal and start working with
Yeah.
it. And I was like, oh, wow. Duh. It was a dumb moment, of course. I kind of had to laugh at myself. Have I done it yet? No. Have I looked at the TC Assist, the different action plans and all the things that go along with it and the reminders and the tasks? Yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. This really is perfect. And the nice thing about it
That's
too is I believe that people that partnered with you guys to do TC Assist in Follow Up Boss, they are actually based here in Arizona. So they really know a
uh-huh.
lot of our terminology and, how we use escrow and all that stuff. So it was a smooth implementation and I'm excited to use it. But I still have this thing stuck in my head where it's like, okay, get somebody under contract first and then use it. So it's waiting.
Yeah, well, I look forward to hearing how it goes with the first deal for sure. So now I would like to show you, let me share screen here, some stats we pulled. I know that like before we started recording this, you had mentioned that there's always room to grow in terms of the usage in the CRM, but regardless of that, you are showing here with just the stats that can't lie in your reporting section in Follow Boss that you are doing better not only each year, but we actually like we broke it down between first half and second half of years. So you are improving at least every 6 months. Who knows if we broke it down quarter to quarter? But let me just show and hopefully is that big enough, or should I zoom in a bit?
You can zoom in a little bit, but I'm looking at this going, holy crap. Pardon my French.
Well, I'm trying to zoom, it's not working, so we'll just
Yeah,
keep
I
it
can
as
see
is.
it.
Okay. So I mentioned a bit earlier, like we initially started working with you in the beginning of 2024, like literally in January. So we took the second half of 2024 compared to almost the first half, like March to July. Initially, your appointments set went up 30%, and then your average call attempts, so that's your own work being put into the CRM initially went up 25%. Then fast forward to the first part of 2025 compared to the last half of 2024, it went up an additional 23%. of how much calls you're making.
Wow.
So it's a
Okay.
total of 50% basically since before we started working with you. And then deals went up 200%, which I'm curious, had you been tracking deals and follow up us at that point? Like when we initially
No.
started working? Okay. So that then explains that. Now,
Yeah.
what's really interesting to me is this next one. I wanted to ask you how. How do you think your calls went up 18,000%? Did you have someone helping you make calls, or did you
Yes.
just start getting more consistent with calls?
Yes. That was not entirely me. I mean, there's no way in heck. That's a huge number, but yes, there was somebody that I did hire for a couple months. Like I mentioned, going back to my comment earlier, was, hey, let's give it a shot. I had some sales. Let's invest in an ISA, and she was doing a great job. She really was. Very bubbly person, wonderful personality, making calls, communicated very well, and she was in there clearly a lot. I mean, I knew she was, but I didn't know it was like that. So yes, that wasn't me. All
Okay,
me, I
I
should say.
didn't think so, unless you just all of a sudden had a complete shift and you're like, I'm gonna make 100 calls every day and that's it.
Right. No, that
And
was her. Her name is Gabby. She's amazing. And I'm
that's
happy
great.
to, if you guys have questions about who the company was, I'm happy to share it because they were great.
That's good. That's good to hear. And then the last one is your deals went up an additional 166%. So that kind of just makes sense with the additional calls that she was making and appointments increasing. As a result, that would result in more deals. So, congrats to you on the progress made thus far. I know that, like you mentioned, there's always room for improvement. You've learned along the way. Something I was going to mention when you said that is like when you're really hard on yourself, I think that resonates with all business owners. Like that resonates with me
Yeah.
whenever I make a mistake or when a client gets upset. I'm sure you've dealt with upset clients. Like it's really hard to not take it personally and to not just like hang on to it. But that's something
Yeah.
that I'm sure you and I both are continuing to work on as well. It's just like personal improvement to not beat ourselves up for every little mistake or not even mistake, but just not the right time and place to make a decision for something to happen.
I couldn't agree more. Just, personal growth, learning how to, I don't know, beating yourself up in order to get better at something is backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Joe, last question for you as we wrap up the conversation today. And I'm putting you on the spot. You may have to think about it. That's okay.
Sure.
Um, I'd love to hear one strategy or tip that you could share with people watching or listening that you've implemented in your business that's helped in some way. Doesn't have to be specific to follow up boss or technology, just something that's had an impact on your business.
I would have to say, and I don't mean this, as like I'm great or anything, but one of the things I've always heard from, friends is a couple things. First of all, be who you are at the end of the day. Be who you
Mhm.
are. And be likable. Be likable. I've heard this from Ricky Carruth and a bunch of other people because at the end of the day, every agent out there can tell you how, their numbers are great. They sold this, that, or the other thing. They have wonderful marketing and yada, yada,
Mhm.
yada, yada. But you know what? If you don't have a connection with your clients or a prospect where they like you and you're just not going to, you're just not going to be great as far as I'm concerned. And I've just taken that and said, okay, it's okay for me to believe, I'm a likable person. I'm pretty engaging to talk with. And, I've done a lot of work. I used to be really a shy person and, not a lot of confidence, but, it's okay to have the confidence that, hey, people like you. They like working with you. Um, and keep going with that. Don't change. Don't try to be a chameleon to, you know, be perfect for every different person that you meet because you can't do that. It comes across as fake. So be real, be kind, be professional. And the other thing I heard from somebody was warmth and confidence. If you can show warmth, confidence, and likability, you're going to do great.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so, yeah, you're probably not the type of person who is trying to dissect if you're on the phone call or at an appointment, you're trying to dissect like someone's disc personality. Like, okay, I need to adjust the way I speak to them or mirror. Like you're just there to make sure that you have a connection with the client, like you said.
Yes, and there is a piece of listening. There is a piece of, like Chris Voss talks about, which is mirroring, labeling, things like that, which just is a way to communicate to the other person that you hear them, you're listening, and the other piece of that too is, not only likable, but am I hearing what you're saying? Am I making it about you and not about me? And that just comes from, I started my first job was working at a hotel at the front desk. So you really had to put on your customer service hat at that point to
That is,
just,
yeah, that's a really
say,
tough.
it was, but it was fun at the same time.
That's great. Well, Joe, thank you for your time and that little nugget. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. If there's anything else I can do for you guys, I'm here for you. Because one last thing I have to say about your company and working with you guys is I've never felt sold. Never felt sold by anything that you guys do. It is about providing value and help to improve business. And that to me just speaks volumes. So there you go.
Thank you so much. That means so much coming from you. That is definitely our goal. We don't want people like you to feel sold, definitely. So thank you so much
Yep.
for sharing that last thought.
You're welcome.